Welcome everybody to the Geek Show. I am the Geek, and we are back in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Last weekend we were in Indianapolis, Indiana for the Pokemon National Championships. Now, they did the video game and the card game. So, now if you play the video game, you're thinking, I didn't know they had a world championship for that. I didn't either until I went, and you know what? It's very competitive, and I highly recommend any video game player to do this because it's amazing. Now, the trading card game, that was a whole different world for me, and it was crazy to see some of these players and what drives them. So we did an interview series. We interviewed actually 8 players. Now, 5 of them did a round table sitting. So this will be a 4-part series that we will have here on the Geek Show. And first thing first, we interviewed a young man by the name of Adam Jones. Now, he told us where he's from and he told us his story, which you will hear here in a few minutes. Now, not to get y'all confused, this is not Adam Pac-Man Jones. This is Adam Jones, the Pokemon player. He is very well-rounded at the game and has been playing for a nice little while. We're going to get to hear his story and what drives him to play the game of Pokemon. Now, I've always talked about the Geek Show is about what geeks you. What is your desire? What is your passion? And Pokemon is these young men's desires. This is what drives them. This is what geeks them. This is their geek lifestyle. Now, as you know, this to me was a whole new world. And I literally walked into a geek illusion. Literally, a geek revolution. And this was so amazing. So awesome. And I want to thank Adam Jones and all these other interviewers for opening my eyes to the world of Pokemon. This is so amazing. Such an amazing experience. And if you've never been to a national championship, I highly recommend you at least go to Indianapolis, Indiana next year and check out the Pokemon National Championships. Now, first part of the series, ladies and gentlemen, this is Adam Jones following the Pokemon theme song.
Pokemon, Pokemon, Pokemon.
Let's do it. I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test. To train them is my cause. My whole life is led to this. Time to test my skills. I know I just can't miss. Gonna show the world. Born to be a winner. Born to be a champion. Born to be a winner. Born to be the very best.
Pokemon,
Born to be a winner. Pokemon.
Alright, we are here in Indianapolis, Indiana for the Geek Show. Today we are going to interview one of the competitors in the Pokemon National Championships. And what is your name?
Hi guys, my name's Adam Jones, and I am a competitor in the tournament. And I'm kind of nervous here today. This is the first time being recorded for anything, but I'm from Mississippi, and I've been playing competitively for about 3 years. But I've mostly been around Pokemon my whole life. It's been a really big part in my life. It's definitely got me through some hard times, and it's definitely brought some good things in my life. And sometimes I kind of wonder, what would I do without it? But it's all good, and I'm just here to have fun and hopefully come back with a national championship.
So how long have you been exactly playing, and how many national championships have you actually been in?
Well, if I wanted to be exact about that, I've been playing ever since it came out in back in the mid-late 90s, just about like everybody else my age. You play as a little kid, you don't know the rules, but as long as you just got Charizard, you're the toughest kid on the playground. But I played it as a kid up till about 7th grade, and then it's funny me being on the Geek show and confessing this, but I went into the closet nerd phase all through about high school. But about 3 or 4 years ago, I picked up the game just kind of as something to do in college. And long story short, I was also going through a really severe case of depression, and Pokemon was just there for me. It gave me an out, to handle things and to be able to, put my mind off of the problems I was having and the things that were keeping me down. And one day, I was sitting in the student union to where I was going to school at the time. And it's funny, because Pokemon's about, you always get your first Pokemon or your Pokedex from a professor. And one of the professors at this campus actually played competitively, and she got me into the competitive scene. And unfortunately, she doesn't play anymore. But just like the video games, I got my start from a professor, and 3 years in, I wouldn't trade it for anything. This will be my third nationals I'm playing in, and I'm really expecting to do well this year.
Have you ever competed in the Worlds?
Worlds, one of the things about these card games is there's a lot of money involved, and I've always tried to have balance in my life when it comes to card games and stuff. Prioritize, and anybody out there that's talking about that, that's priorities is one thing you have to keep in mind when playing these card games. And Worlds, if I do well this weekend, I'll get my invite to Worlds. But if I go to Worlds, if I go, great. If not, I won't. But I'm getting off tangent on it. No, I haven't. It's just always been like a money thing, and it's always just been like right there before like my school semester would start. But hey, if I do well this weekend, if I top 8, I get a trip to Worlds, and it's right here, Washington D.C. So I definitely will be going if I can get there.
Yeah. Last year, I think it was in Canada, right?
Yeah, it was in Canada. It was in Vancouver, and it was actually quite funny because Pokemon primarily is always like the World Championship's always been like within America. Originally it was like in Orlando, it's been in California, and for a while it was in Hawaii. And it was like that was the first time to my knowledge I knew the World Championship being outside of the United States. And I remember like looking on forums and talking with people that I knew, and people just getting really butthurt about it. And I was like, it's ironic, that we're getting butthurt about this, and like all the other people from the other countries have been playing, and traveling to us. And now, we've just got to go a few minutes over into Vancouver, which, customs, passport, all that stuff, it's a big mess. But, I always looked at it like it wasn't that big of a deal. I hate that I didn't have the opportunity to go, but, I've always been one for traveling, that if I get an opportunity to go somewhere, it's great. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's one of the things I love about Pokemon is, I wouldn't be here in Indianapolis. I wouldn't have gone to the places or meet the people that I've met. Just here today, I've met some really solid people, that I hope to build a good friendship with. But, that's one of the best things about it is traveling. And, I would like to see it eventually, maybe one day in Japan. That would be great.
So tomorrow, how exactly do you feel about like the competition and the atmosphere tomorrow?
Well, going into that, I've got a weird little ritual I like to do. Always the night before a big tournament, I always like to watch 300 because, going into these bigger premier events, and I see you over there laughing at that, but it's in these big premier events. It's like that. My biggest accomplishment was a top 4 at Houston Regionals this year, and that was like out of like 250 something Masters, which is the highest division you can play in for Pokemon is the Masters. It goes junior, senior, Masters, and that's like kids, teenagers, and adults or later teens. But the thing about it, you have to think about this is in these bigger tournaments is you really don't know exactly what you're going to face round to round. And if you've ever had any kind of like common knowledge of card games, or you play a card game, whether it's Magic or Yu-Gi-Oh or Kaijudo, or the one that's really I get a kick out of here really is Buddy Fight, and mostly just because of the name. But if you play Buddy Fight, that's no big deal. I'm not going to hate on you for it. But in these big tournaments, you don't know. Whereas when you play in local shops or you play like in state championships, you have an idea of what your meta game's going to be. But in a national setting, generally the best thing you got to do is you just got to tech your deck for the mirror match when you play the same deck as yours and you play your worst matchup. I mean, that's really the best thing you can do. And, I see a lot of people just get crazy, after one loss. But, I mean, tomorrow we're going to play 9 rounds of preliminaries to cut to 64 people. And then, you'll play that more down to 8 people. So, my thing is it's just a marathon and you got to take one game at a time.
I know I've heard some people talk about today that the first game is the stressful one. After you get through that, it's like a big amount of stress is taken off of you, and it gets easier. Is that true?
Yes and no. Because a lot of times is when you lose that first game, it puts you in an odd place because you're playing at lower tables, and generally at lower tables, that's when you'll see these weird rogue decks that they just look like a pile of cards, but in some way they work. And I know the biggest card right now that's making a splash in Pokemon is Pyroar. And for those that don't know, Pyroar is actually, like with Pokemon in the video game and the card game, they have abilities as in different card games you'll have special triggers and effects. Pyroar's got this effect that anything that's like a basic Pokemon, which, one that doesn't evolve or, is the pre-evolution of one, Pyroar can't take damage from those. And one of the big things going on right now in Pokemon is these big legendary Pokemon being the main attackers. And well, with most legendaries they don't evolve. And Pyroar is making a big splash, but I mean, personally, in my opinion, I don't think it'll do very well at this event. I know it's won some smaller nationals in Southeast Asia and stuff like that, and I think the Czech Republic. But the thing about nationals in America is you got to have a lot of luck and you got to have a consistent deck. And when you win that first match, I mean, you're playing against a lot. You're playing against the excitement of nationals, especially if it's your first time. The nerves, you don't know what you're going to play. And kind of as you get higher up in the tables, it's more predictable of what you can play because generally the top players, they're birds of a feather. They'll all pretty much play the same deck. But at the same time, as it's easier to predict your matchups and what you could face, the quality of the opponent gets tougher. So, I mean, it's really kind of like a 50-50 thing, really.
A little bit ago, you were talking about you listen to 300 before you play. Well, back when I actually did wrestling, the reason I was laughing, I used to watch Gladiator.
There you go.
And that movie got me so hyped. It was my drug. Because it made me feel like, okay, I can do anything. And is that what kind of feeling that does to you? Makes you kind of feel like you're unstoppable?
Well, yeah, it really does. And I'm glad you said The Gladiator because that's also my favorite movie. So I commend you on your theatrical taste there. But, I mean, it's just one of those things that for these bigger tournaments and even just a smaller tournament, I mean, it's all about mindset. And you got to do whatever you can to get yourself in the right mindset to play. Because, I mean, when you go to these big tournaments, you run a mental marathon. And, one of the things I always like to joke about is I kind of treat the card games like an anime. And, I'll play these playlists of Japanese rock music and stuff like that, which has been a fun experience, to develop a broader musical taste. But, I mean, it's one of those odd quirks I have. And, if I think of this as Dragon Ball Z or Yu-Gi-Oh or something, it'll give me an edge. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it, sometimes it'll just stress me out and put me in a weird state of mind. But it's kind of like that Bud Light commercial where it's only stupid if it doesn't work, if you've ever seen that. And that's the way I've always been about the 300 movie. It's I did it one night and then the next day I did really well. And I've always done that. And it's the same thing. I know you guys probably can't see it, but I've actually got a Pokemon wristband and it's got a little Pokeball on it. First tournament I ever went to, my first full year of competitive play, a friend of mine, he gave me this wristband, just because he didn't want it, and I put it on before the tournament, and long story short, I ended up doing really well. I think I got second or third in my first tournament ever, and since then, anytime I've went to a tournament, I've always made sure to wear one of these wristbands, and it's just a little odd quirks, but hey, if it works, it works.
I mean, yeah, we all have our own little quirks. This right here, I always wear when I do a podcast or I'm talking to people. because it makes me feel a little bit more comfortable for some reason. I don't know why, just it does. Um, Tomorrow, what kind of deck are you going to kind of run? Are you going to run a like a mixed, or is it a particular element going in?
Well, I mean, particular elements really. I guess if I said it, if I had to base it by a water deck type, it would be water. The deck I'm going to be playing tomorrow is called Empoleon. It's called Empire. And basically what it is Empoleon, Miltank, and Dust Noir. And basically what it is it's a deck where you do damage based off of your opponent's Pokemon that they have in play and that you have in play. And, one thing about Pokemon is it's a game of one-hit knockouts. And, sometimes, the object is you take 6 prizes, but with this one, you really don't always take a prize every turn. But eventually what you do is you put enough damage on the board with Empoleon, and then, there's Miltank. And, I know the people that necessarily don't like Miltank because of her stigma from the old Gold and Silver games may not like that, but it's actually a really great card, and it works with the synergy. And then what happens is you come in with Dust Noir, and Dust Noir will move the damage around on your opponent's side of the board. And eventually what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to take multiple prizes a turn so that, you're taking maybe 2, sometimes 4 prizes a turn. Sometimes, if it works out right, 6 prizes. I've never done that, but that would be pretty sweet if I did. But Empoleon, your Empire, whatever you want to call it, it really was just kind of like an afterthought for me because all season I've been playing Team Plasma deck, and I played that religiously. People got to the point where they knew I would play Plasma and, knew to play for it. But, and I still did well against the people that prepared for me. But Empoleon, I just wasn't satisfied with Plasma. The way the meta shifted, like what I was talking about with Pyro earlier, all of Plasma's attackers are basic Pokemon, and you can't do damage to it. And then a lot of it, a lot of the other decks, it just has a 50-50 matchup. And Empoleon, it's got a lot going for it. I mean, it's non-EX Pokemon, which is a mechanic in Pokemon where, like, if something's labeled an EX and you knock it out, you take 2 prize cards to compare to 1. And Empoleon doesn't play any EXs, and plus also that it was relatively cheap to make. I think I spent maybe less than $50 or $60 on it just in general. I mean, honestly, to spend on it, I probably spent about 10, and everything else I just had in my collection. So I mean, it was really cheap for me to make, and it's really consistent. It has really good matchups across the board, and I look to do very well with it.
Well, I mean, it seems like you kind of have it set for tomorrow, so that's always a good thing. At least you're not last minute scrambling around like some of these other players. I mean, I know people right now it's actually scrambling to make sure that deck's strong, which they ain't getting time to test it out either, so that could work against them, maybe in your favor. Pokemon cards, do you have a favorite one or a favorite Pokemon that you just, no matter what, you might not even play it, but it's one that you always go to eventually?
Yeah, as far as like Pokemon goes, I gotta go to Gen 3 for my favorite Pokemon. It's Aggron, this big steel dinosaur, and claims the whole mountain as its territory. And when I first found that out, I always thought it was like, that was pretty fucking badass. Yeah, this is this one little dude just hanging out, claim a whole mountain, just kick the shit out of everybody. I don't know if I can say that, but anyways, but you'll allow it. Okay. But yeah, it just, I just always thought that it was pretty cool. But as far as cards go, my favorite card of all time, oh, man, really it's Lieutenant Surge's Pikachu. And I know there's like 2 or 3 of those out, like back in the 90s, but there's this one particular one where it's like this savanna kind of setting, and it's like Pikachu kind of running towards you, like in the sunset setting, and I actually got it both in Japanese and a first edition American print, but I just remember like seeing that card as a kid in like a collector's guide one day and being like, that's really cool, and I wanted it. And, I remember going to a street fair one day and they had the Japanese gym leader sets there, and I bought a pack, and it was like the first card I'd opened. I was like, it's Destiny or something. But I've got that thing in a top loader, and every now and then I'll pull it out and look at it just to be nostalgic. But I mean, really, I've got a bunch of other favorite cards I have, and like one thing I always do when I do really well with a deck is I will keep at least one card, if like the main Pokemon of that deck, with me, and I could probably sell everything off, but the one Pokemon that stuck out from that deck will stay there. I know my top four Houston list was a Team Plasma deck, like I had said earlier, and the main attacker of that deck was Kyurem, and I've still got one of the Kyurems from that deck, top loaded and put away. And it's just kind of like a little memory thing. And eventually one day, when I'm not playing anymore, I'd like to be able to put those things like up on a plaque or something and kind of hang on a wall or something. It's just, but yeah, I could sit there and talk about favorite Pokemon cards all day.
Talking about collecting cards, I actually collected my last pack I got, and it was a Team Rocket Pokemon set, and it actually had the Team Rocket Pikachu in it. And I still have that thing on my wall. Love that thing. That was, like, to me, the most amazing, because it's kind of an evil side of Pikachu. And I just thought that was always kind of cool. Yeah. How's the game evolved over the years?
The game's really evolved a lot. Just really, because back in its humble beginnings, back in the 90s, there was really kind of like a step up to Magic. Where you could get kids in, and if you look at the original rules, it kind of had some of the similar dynamics to Magic and very close kind of like shot off kind of similarities. But as it's evolved, the games have gotten quicker. Yeah, kind of now you see back like in the mid 2000s, there was like the formats and the games were like really skill based, and I remember when I first got into the game, it was just really luck based and just kind of like whoever drew hot. And now, the game's slowed down a lot more, and they've introduced a lot of different mechanics and stuff like that. And it's like I see them trying to make a comeback towards more of that skill based idea, but there's still a lot of luck in the game. But that's what makes it fun. It does makes it unpredictable. Because I've played other card games. Goodness, I even played Duel Masters when it was a thing. And, it just was like one of those things that it just bored me. And, I've tried Magic, and I just wasn't satisfied with it. I just was like, man, this is kind of slow. But, Pokemon, it's always been one of those games that I've told people, it's like, you're never truly out of it. You can play one card and just mess over your opponent, and then you can come back from behind. I've had a lot of come from behind victories in my past 4 years, and that's what makes it fun and makes it exciting.
On that note, saying you have a lot of come behind victories and stuff, what's like the one of those times you thought you were down and out, and literally you pulled out that card and went, okay, I have an opportunity right now to maybe make a comeback, and you did?
That's funny you asked that, because actually I just had something similar that happened to me like a couple weeks ago. I was at a tournament, and I was playing Empire, and I was playing against Yveltal Garbodor, which is a really popular deck right now. And basically, this guy, he only had one prize card left, and I had 3. And my deck was drawing cold, and I'm surprised that I was even still in the game at this point. But what had happened was I just needed, if you're not familiar with Pokemon's got like, their win condition is you have to take 6 prize cards, and every time you knock out a Pokemon, depending on if it's an EX Pokemon or if it's a Pokemon in general, you take 1 or 2 prize cards. And, if you take all 6 of those cards, you win the game. So he had 1 prize, I had 3 prizes. And I'm sitting there, I've got my little unevolved Empoleon just up in the active, because he had knocked out somebody in the previous turn, and I knew that my last Empoleon was prized, and there's another card, that you can skip the middle evolution for like these 3 stage Pokemon. It's called Rare Candy. So I knew like my Rare Candy to get to the Empoleon, and the Empoleon were my prizes. But the thing about my opponent's deck is, that my opponent's deck has a card, Garbodor, which shuts off all the abilities of all the Pokemon except himself in play. Well, my deck has a lot of abilities, and as I talked about earlier about Dustnor being able to move damage around, this Garbodor is in play, and Garbodor's ability, Garbotoxin, only works, which the thing that shuts off all the abilities. It shuts off only if it has like a tool, which can be like a little item. Like if you play the video game, it'd be something like Rocky Helmet or Leftovers or something like that attached to it. So he's got a tool attached to him. And there's this card we've got in format called Tool Scrapper, which removes those things. And I knew that I had one left in my deck, and I knew that I had the Rare Candy and the Empoleon. And I had an energy in my hand, which is something you got to use to have to attack. So I had that attached to my Piplup, and then I top decked Professor Juniper, which for the older players out there, it does the same effect as the old Professor Oak card. You discard your hand, you draw 7 cards. I top decked it right off the top of my deck, so played the energy and everything down, and then I just prayed. And I just threw the Juniper away, threw the rest of my hand away, and got the Tool Scrapper. And was able to take the ability off. And what was interesting about it is that there's also, going back to this whole EX mechanic I talked about earlier, there's a little Pokemon Jirachi from, the 3rd generation of games. And my opponent played a Jirachi in their deck. It's an EX. It's a really good card, but it only has 90 HP. And I had I'd say about 150, 170 damage spread on this guy's board. So what I did was I took the tool off of Garbodor, and I was able to use my abilities again, moved 90 of that damage over to his Jirachi, which he had, misplayed and put down earlier, because he was in ability lock, and his abilities would have been locked off too. So I knocked him out. I took the 2 prizes off and was able to get the Rare Candy and the Empoleon that I needed. Evolved into the Empoleon straight away, and then, moved all the damage back onto his active Pokemon, and then knocked him out that turn. Which is some other crazy stuff, because what I had to do is just pull some other shenanigans, and was able to pull it off.
I mean, that happens pretty often, actually, and that's why you said the game's exciting, because you never know if you're actually going to be out or not. You can't just say, I'm done with that. So, tomorrow, from what I've been understanding, y'all start at 8 o'clock, and y'all probably going all the way up to 9 o'clock tomorrow night, from what I'm hearing. How exhausting does that be on your first day, especially when you might have to go into day 2?
I mean, it's like with anything, like sports or anything generally, you have to like prepare yourself and train yourself for it. One thing me and like people that I play test with, Team Blitzkrieg, actually is, we'll practice like that. We'll play best 2 out of 3. We'll do time matches. We'll do whatever it takes to best acquaint ourselves with that kind of situation. The 9 rounds, yeah, that's going to be tough. But when you've got best 2 out of 3, 50-minute Swiss rounds, I mean, you got to do whatever you can to get the best possible results. And I keep going back to Houston. That's kind of a similar situation we had back in October in Houston. We had 9 rounds with best 2 out of 3, and really, the keys. It just goes back to what your parents tell you: get a good night rest and have a healthy breakfast. Because little things like that make a big difference in the way you play and the way you think, and put you on a healthier mind state. But you just take it one game at a time, and you just have fun.
For some reason, if you did lose, would you stay for the other 2 days of it, or are you planning on maybe leaving early, or what's that plan with that?
The fun thing about this is they've got a lot of side events that go on as well, and different little opportunities to win prizes. And Indianapolis is a great town. It's a great city. I love being here. Coming from Mississippi, it's about 80, 90 to 100 degrees with the heat index and humidity. It's pretty nice to be able to come up here, and it's 66 and not an ounce of humidity in the air. So, if I'm not here, if I'm not in the top 32 or if I'm not in the top 8 this weekend, make it a vacation, make it fun. It's what Pokemon is. It's a fun thing. And, if I was playing for the wrong, if I wasn't playing to have fun, I just don't need to be in the game altogether.
Especially with this being 4th of July weekend, fireworks going on, and it's a nice town. There's a zoo right around the corner here, which we actually went and checked out today. It was awesome. Anybody that's listening, check it out, definitely. Anything that you would like to throw in that, that you feel like you need to touch on with the whole Pokemon situation?
Like my thing is I get this kind of a lot is it's really funny just with like any kind of card games. It's just kind of like the stigma it carries. I'm 23, going on 24 years old right now, and I was just talking to a guy at Noodles and Company, which if you are in Indiana, go eat there. It's definitely not disappointing. But yeah, we were sitting there having a conversation about that, and he was telling me about this time that he had, got pulled over and a cop had saw his Pokemon cards and was like, "Aren't you a little old for that?" But, that's one thing I've always thought about is, why do I play, and what does it matter? Because I mean, one thing about Pokemon is it's got a really big kid and teenager base, and being where I'm at in and playing this game, you become kind of a mentor almost, and it's not just playing for a championship, it's not just playing for cards or whatever, it's just because when you start interacting with these kids and start doing that, it becomes a more deeper thing. And I mean, if that's one of the things that really drives me as a player, is to be able to go to these things and you almost get kind of treated like a celebrity because there's kids there that are like looking up to you and looking forward to you being there. And I mean, it's one of the most rewarding things probably of that is, I mean, knowing that, I have an impact on somebody's life. And yeah, people, I get a lot of, hard time from, people being like, it's such a kid's game. I mean, it's not really a kid's game. I mean, if, you get immersed in it, you get in the community, you find out that it's more than that. I mean, to be honest, I didn't have any friends till I started playing Pokemon. I mean, like I said earlier in the podcast, I was depressed and I just stumbled upon Pokemon, and I mean, it's all true. It's just, there's so much more to it than just, cards or piling up in a card shop or a comic book store. I mean, it's, I wouldn't want to say it's a way of life. I think that would be a little bit of much, but it definitely broadens your horizons. And I mean, anybody that's afraid, to come out and play cards or anything like that, do it. I don't want to say YOLO, but you only live once, and I mean, give it a shot. That's the best thing I can say. You can't knock it till you try it. But definitely Pokemon. It's all over the place. It's definitely making a big comeback now with the XY games and the card game, the video games getting really big. What a better time to play Pokemon than right now.
Do you ever think there's gonna be a time that you're gonna be too old for it?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things. It's not necessarily a thing about being too old because I've always been the one to believe that you really don't grow old until you kill off the kid inside of you. So I mean, I'll probably have some involvement in Pokemon the rest of my life, but traveling to tournaments or anything like that, there is a time that comes to that, when you've got bigger priorities. Another thing I'd said earlier, going back to this, I mean, priorities are a thing. When I'm not playing cards, I'm a writer, I'm a college student. When those kind of things are like my job comes pressing me, that's one of the things why I don't go to Worlds. I mean, it's because I've got to work, I've got responsibilities, and when those responsibilities, outweigh the need to play Pokemon, that's a proper time, and I've seen myself, maybe playing this until after college or, after grad school. But, when you're 30 or so and you don't have kids, that's when you got to be a grown-up. But, I mean, if you got kids in it and you're that age, I mean, I know of like 67-year-old grandparents playing with their grandkids, which is totally fine. But, I mean, there comes a time that you got to put that away and just kind of leave it as a memory. But, I'll always probably have something to do with Pokemon, but probably not always be a premier tournament player.
Especially with like Pokemon now, making getting more involved in Smash Brother games and like what is it, Alpha Sapphire, and Omega Ruby. Yeah, that one coming. There's so many different. I think Pokemon Bank. I know Mario Kart, they're going to do some DLCs for some Pokemon characters as drivable characters. It's one of those things. Nintendo knows it's money, and it's going to live through everything. Nintendo, more than likely. Do you ever play any of the games? Like, the video games, the Smash Brothers, anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I still have my old original Game Boy Pocket that I got my start in Pokemon with, and it still works. Which every once in a while I'll break out the old Red and Blue games and play those. I had a 2DS, and I say that because somehow between when we left for this, me and my group left for this trip, and now somehow the screen cracked on it, and now I've got about 400 or 500 something Pokemon sitting in a cartridge I have nothing to do with. Almost thought about selling the game, but I've got some Pokemon on there that I've had since I was a kid. So, that's unfortunate. Smash Brothers, yeah, but I never played the Pokemon people. I've always when Melee came out and I first found out about Marth, it was just kind of like love at first sight. So I really fell in love with Marth, and any chance I get to play with Marth, I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer. But I didn't actually know about that with the Mario Kart thing. I mean, I've been so far away from console gaming. I didn't even know that thing about the Mario Kart. Mostly, I think because I hate Mario Kart because I'm so bad at it. I mean, if that's fair for me to hate it, because I'm so terrible. But I know. I mean, you're right. I mean, it definitely sells, and it'll definitely be around, and as long as Nintendo's around, I believe. I mean, I know we'll probably eventually start making Pokemon out of shoes and tablecloths, maybe. But if it makes money, I mean, you can't argue with that.
I know Nintendo right now, they're kind of in a bad situation money-wise, and hopefully they can revive their situation with the Wii U with Smash Brothers. But that should get completely should revamp the whole Nintendo series right there, I'm hoping. On that note, I don't have any more questions for you. I do want to wish you good luck tomorrow. Hopefully you will make it to the top 8 and get that free ride to Worlds, man. Good luck, and do you have any final thoughts?
Really, no. Just other than the fact, it's really awesome to be on this first time being recorded on anything, and just try my best, and that's all I can do.
Well, you're our first guest for the Nationals, and you will be our first one to air. So if you're listening, this is the first one of the many Pokemon interviews to come. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Geek Show this evening, and we will be back next week for more episodes. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to this amazing podcast. Thank you again, Adam Jones, for being a guest. And that was such a great interview. Such a great, humble guy. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, we will have the roundtable conversation with 5 top Pokemon players this Saturday on Podomatic. Special G will be with me, and we will talk Pokemon, and I will talk about the sights and sounds of Indianapolis. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being such a great audience out there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is The Geek signing off, and Geek on.